You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
You know, I wish we could find some way to hold people accountable. Free speech is a great idea, but we're in a war.
To make sure the economy doesn't collapse, I've abandoned free market principles to save the free market system.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
You're listening to Common Sense Radio with A.J. Davis on the Lanterns Radio Network.
Welcome to the program, folks. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network. How you doing, Susan?
I am blessed and highly favored, AJ. How are you?
I am wonderful. How can everybody find you on Twitter?
Well, you can find me on social media at Real Susan Swift, on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. How about you, AJ? Where can they find you?
On Twitter, you can find me at Oregon Redskin, or our Twitter page is at CS Radio 503.
And we are fighting the good fight on the left coast.
Yes, tonight is Spend-A-Palooza. And we have a guest that I'm having a little tech issues right now, but we will figure that out. Susan, how was your week so far?
Oh, my week is just great, but I haven't bothered to watch any of the nonsense going on with the Olympics and everything. I just figured, forget it. I've listened to it. It's like I am not going to watch the media fawn all over the dictatorship of North Korea and watch, synchronized girls who are going to be threatened with rape if they don't perform well. I'm just not going to watch it.
You mean you're not watching any curling?
That I actually love watching. I love curling. I think it's so cool how the little rock goes whoosh.
Now, is it brooms or is it Swiffers that they use?
I have no idea, but the coolest thing, watching people just panicking over the ice, going whoosh, 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 and this little big ball going down. I think it's just the most interesting thing I've ever seen. I mean, I found it a few years ago, but I guess, last Olympic or the one before. So
awesome. Hey, so tonight we're glad to welcome Brandon Morris from redstate.com. He's going to join the program tonight, and I wanted to bring him on about an article he wrote last week titled "What Republican Party?" It was an excellent piece. I read it a few times, and it starts out: "Give us the executive branch, give us the House, give us the Senate, and all the pains you experience from the Obama era will disappear." Brandon, how are you?
Good. How are you?
We are fantastic.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so that's the only thing we heard for the last 4 to 6 years. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, and it was a promise that we were all looking forward to be honest with you. We wanted the Republicans to take over the Democrats because the Democrats had just really torn stuff apart in the economy, whether it be financial or social. We were just facing all sorts of problems that were just stemming from being overtaxed, overburdened, overregulated. And so we believed the Republicans. Vote us in. We'll fix everything. And so we did. And it seemed like everything was going great with the GOP tax cut. And then suddenly, spending caps. Well, let's blow past those, even if it means that we're going to shut down the government, or so we can avoid shutting down the government. If you were looking at it from my perspective, shut down the government as long as you need to in order to figure out the spending problems. If you can't figure out the spending problems, keep it shut down until you do. It's not that big a deal.
Absolutely. Is there anybody in D.C. that we can trust besides Rand Paul and Mike Lee? I mean, Ted Cruz was put in a situation that was he had no choice. His state was hit by a disaster. The hurricanes, they put him in that position, and he's in an election year, Of course he's going to vote yes, because the natural disaster was probably the most important thing that he's thinking about right now, which we all should. But we have to cut the spending. I mean, and then today, President Trump unveiled his infrastructure plan. I have 3 children, 10, 8, and 3. I'm worried about the debt that they're going to have. I mean, that should be everybody's concern. What do you think?
Worry about the debt that you're going to have too.
Yeah,
that's I think.
That too.
It's not just your children that are going to suffer. I mean, they've been piling this debt on us for a while. The reason that we actually create these spending caps is so that we can budget smart. We can watch our spending. I mean, they put this in the context of your own home. If you don't have the money, you don't spend that money. For some odd reason, the government acts like a teenage girl with her daddy's credit card. Right? They just keep spending and spending and spending, and they don't have to worry about it because they're not going to have to pay the bill, and that's absolutely true. They don't have to pay that bill. We have to pay that bill. And so I'm already up to my eyes in debt as it is because of these people. I'm very worried about the children that I'm going to have and the debt that they're going to have to pay. That is true. But we are facing that situation right now.
Yeah, it's very scary. And when Rand Paul was standing up there filibustering, the people at Huffington Post writers, Bette Midler, were tweeting out in support of someone replaying the attack of his neighbor. I mean, I saw how you quoted that in the article. And not this particular article, but this kind of piggybacked off different articles over the last week. And I didn't see it at the HuffPost. I saw Bette Midler, but I mean, writers for a news organization are wishing harm to a U.S. senator because he's doing what he promises constituents to do.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised by that, though. I mean, we've got the mainstream media currently heaping praise on North Korea, a brutal dictatorial regime where they torture their own people for stepping out of line even remotely. Don't be surprised about the fact that they wished harm on Rand Paul, physically and publicly wished harm on Rand Paul. This is par for the course. I'm not so much surprised at it. I've been worried. Well, here's the thing. I was just going to say, I mean, I've been working in this for 7 years. I'm always still kind of taken aback when they do this kind of thing, especially the hypocrisy of it. Sarah Palin, she'll put a crosshairs on cities where, important political races are happening so that, people can focus on them. And she's blamed for Kathy Gifford's shooting. However, they can physically wish. I mean, and I'm talking about actually full on say, I wish Rand Paul would get his ass kicked, a butt kicked again. Very sorry.
No worries.
And suddenly, and there's no peep out of anybody from the no modicum of outrage.
It's like Madonna wishing, I would seriously wish that I could blow up the White House. Remember that? I mean,
yeah, from the Women's March.
Yeah, some kind of women's march. But yeah, I have an opinion on those women. But yeah, they get to say, they can say, I'm a nasty woman. And they can say all kinds of, they can attack people verbally. And it's never their fault if something bad happens, right?
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, here's the funny part, though, is the more threats that Rand Paul gets, the more you know that he's doing the right thing. And
if you're not taking flack, you're not over the target.
Yeah, exactly. So the more, every time you'll notice this, the more time that Rand Paul or Ted Cruz or Mike Lee or Justin Amash spend in the crosshairs, the more you know that they're doing the right thing. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said, and I could be wrong. I always seem to get this quote mixed up. Who said that the natural order of things is for liberty to recede and tyranny to take control. People are used to being told what to do and having their lives kind of dictated over. So they find it scary Because when you really think about it, dictatorial control is kind of security in a way. The less options you have, the more choices you have, the less you panic, the more safe you feel, the more you feel like somebody else is in control. So when you have people like Ted Cruz or mostly Rand Paul and Mike Lee or Justin Amash actually coming in and saying stuff like, look, guys, we need to take control. We need less taxes, less government control, less government oversight. Let the local and state governments do their own thing. People actually get scared. They think that there's no safety net anymore, so they flip out and they wish harm. They literally wish harm on these people who are coming in and saying, no, you decide what you want to do with your own life. It scares them. Yeah. But, sadly, that's just the way it goes right now.
I love the title of your article, which is "What Republican Party?" and I think that there's a ring of truth to that, because so many, I think there are 40 members of the House who are the Freedom Caucus. That's kind of what's left of what I used to associate with the Republican Party.
Oh, same.
And you call it, the conservative party. And the Republicans have moved off of the conservative message, if they ever had one from long ago.
Right.
Now we really are. I think it was. I'm trying to remember when he said it, but Breitbart is the one that said. Andrew Breitbart said that first we're going to have to beat the Democrats, and then we're going to have to beat the Republicans.
That is absolutely true.
And that's where we're at today, is because the Republicans are doing what they do best, which is they talk a good game, and they said, just give us more power, we can do it. And then, as you say in your article, they get cold feet, and now it's all back to, well, we don't really want to cut the budget. We want to manage it in the way that we see fit and benefit our people.
Let me go ahead and translate that for you, though. What that means is when they say that manage the budget as we see fit, what they really mean to say is manage the budget in the way that will get us reelected next election season. So they are all trying to keep their jobs. That's why they did what they did. If they really cared about the budget, they really cared about fiscal responsibility like the Republican Party claims that they do, they would risk their careers. They would risk their jobs and say, look, we need to cut back spending. We need to make sure that despite any damage to our reputation, we do the right thing and make sure that this country gets back on track. But they didn't. They didn't.
So what you're saying is we're screwed.
What we lack is a principled politician. We need principled politicians.
Right. We need more Rand Pauls. We need more Mike Lees. We need more Justin Amashes. That will turn this country around. If we had people who actually stood up for the values that they say that they have, then we would have no problem. The GOP would probably be the most. And here's the other thing that I think many people don't really consider. If the GOP actually stuck to their guns and say or do what they said that they were going to do, they would probably be the most powerful party in Washington to date. All right. They would probably never lose an election again because people know that they could trust them. They know what they're going to get. We are currently living in a time when the Democrats can't seem to get a foothold in anything, A, because they're liars, B, because they're spoiled sports. I mean, you saw that during the State of the Union address when they couldn't stand up for even the smallest thing, the smallest gain for American people. You saw the Black Caucus staying put, stone-faced, as we announced that the black population, the black community, is having the lowest unemployment numbers that we have seen in, 40 years?
Right, and they couldn't stand up for that, even when it's benefiting apparently their own group.
Right, exactly. The people that they claim to stand up for. So we have full-on proof right now that the Democrat Party doesn't care about the people. What they care about is power. This is all on display right now, all right? The Republican Party was doing great. They were doing great work, and they were set to just succeed, all right? But the problem is that you're not going to get anywhere if you claim to support one group, one kind of thinking, and then completely reverse course and do the exact thing that we were mad about your enemy doing.
Well, they're very good at being a minority party. They're very good at being a minority party. They can sit up there and kind of kibitz and fuss around and say, well, we need more power. This isn't fair. We need to cut the budget. And then when they have the reins of power, they seem to not know what to do with it because I guess maybe they really do want just the power. I used to think that there was a lot of difference between the two parties. At least maybe I was idealistic.
I was disillusioned from that a while back.
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, if I had to vote for something that I could count on, now don't get me wrong, nobody pass out. I would have to vote for a Democrat, right? Because at least with Democrats, you do get what they promise. They promise bigger spending. They promise that they're going to take care of you. They're going to give you a cell phone. They're going to give you food. They're going to take care of their people. They do it all the time, and they're going to take money away from others and give it to you. And so you can bet that they will do what
it's so
they're
funny
promising.
that during the 2016 election, the one thing that I said constantly was, of all the politicians, I believe more than any of them, the one that I can trust to do what he said he's going to do is Bernie Sanders. Yep.
The Burninator.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because communists are the most sincere. They really true. I mean, communism is a very sincere political aspiration because, in theory, it is very almost. It can make an analogy to a religion. You know, it's we'll share with everyone. It'll be like the disciples in Christ. Of course, that is not the truth of what it is, and that's not. It isn't that. But that's the appeal. Is that it's so good-hearted, and so a true communist who's drunk the Kool-Aid, man, they are all for it, except for when it comes to. But then somebody has to be able to administer it and make sure that it's fair. So who would that be then?
Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that's right, Bernie. Bernie. Yeah. So the GOP needs a spinal implant. Is that what you're saying, Brandon?
Well, I mean, how long have we been saying that for? I feel like for years. I mean, even since the era of when Obama first started, you know, we had John McCain saying the nicest stuff about Obama as Obama was railing on him.
That man is not a conservative. McCain is not a conservative. He's a
rhino. He's a progressive.
I agree with that 100%. Don't get me wrong.
He was a bad candidate from. He was a bad candidate from the beginning. I mean,
absolutely. But even back then, I mean, like, you know, they were trying to play Mr. Nice Guy. And I'm sorry, before this is a political war, this is a culture war. All right. And we need to show up to it. We need to show up to it. And so if Obama played it perfectly, Mitt Romney tried to play it, but he wasn't very good at it. He kind of felt like a guy who was just introduced to the concept and was trying to get used to it. Donald Trump won the culture war hands down. He knew how to play the game, you know.
Yep.
But as it stands,
do you think? I mean, I'm kind of interested in what he's done for this budget. It reminds me just a little bit of what Reagan did, which is what he said is fine. Blow up the domestic spending. Go ahead. You do what you need to do, but I need to get my agenda done. And it resulted in massive growth and a flood of new income into the government for almost 30 years. So I'm just wondering if this budget, I know everybody's doom and gloom about it, but the interesting thing is it's as though, look, so many Americans are so done with the politicians, as you're talking about, there is no, you know, the GOP is the same as the DNC. They're all about the power, right? And so what did America do? America decided, all right, I am going with the outsider. I'm going to go with the guy who can get the job done. I don't really care what he takes to get the job done. I mean, he's been in a year. He says he needs this budget or that budget. Fine. I'm going to give him it's like a CEO of a company. You need a new budget to accomplish the growth of the company. Fine. Get it done. I'll get back to you in a year or two, and I'll see if you got the job done. So I think most Americans they're not as concerned about this budget because they figure, oh, well, Trump is in charge. He's going to make sure that he delivers on his promise.
Well, I think that's business as usual because, in one hand, if the Democrats were doing this, Susan, and they were ballooning the deficit, we would all be on the front line saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. So that's where I come in, and I think Brandon, from his article, would agree, is that just because he wants it doesn't mean we give it to him. Because the Trump tweeted out, we had to give them. We had to. What? I'm trying to remember what he said. He said he tweeted out, I have to sign this because we increase spending we need more Republicans in office. Well, if I was him, I would have vetoed it and send it back to him and cut the discretionary spending. The natural disaster relief funds were fine. I have no problem with that. But I don't want to. What was it? Let me pull it up real quick. It was something about, Brandon, can you quote? There was some block grant that they approved. Was it like $2 billion or something like that? $2 billion for medical research, and let me see. $6 billion to fight the opioid. I get some of that, but we have to cut spending. That's the number one thing. No matter what, we have to cut spending.
Yeah, especially this is especially needed after a tax cut. If you're going to cut taxes, you absolutely need to cut spending. Otherwise, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot. Where's that money going to come from now that the government is spending all this money on? I agree. I would have sent it back and have been like, look, I think it's great that you're returning a lot of discretionary spending to the state and local governments. That's superb. What can we get rid of that will help us? And I hear right now that they're actually looking at entitlement reform. I am all about that. That is the vast majority of our spending. If they can tackle that and kill it, then all is forgiven. If they can, I shouldn't say all of it. They're not going to be able to kill all of it, of course. But if they can get rid of most of the wasteful entitlement spending that we have, then every mistake that they made up until that point is forgiven.
I would love that. There was a proposition just to cut everything, just everything across the line except military. Cut everything by is it called the penny plan? I'd heard about it.
No, the sequester, you and they've already backed off of that.
But I know, but wouldn't that? Just to start phasing it out. I'm all for spending cuts. The problem is that they don't seem to have the fiscal discipline to actually cut any spending. So what we have to do is and I hope Trump can do, but I hope somebody will. We just have to start cutting departments. We have to start lay them off and just saying, what in the world is the national, endowment of the arts? Why do we need
the Department of Education?
Right. Why do we need that?
That should be a state-run thing.
Of course it should be a state-run thing. They should just sunset it and get rid of it.
Exactly. There are so many. Why do we have the IRS?
Oh,
maybe that's a libertarian in me coming out.
Because the Democrats need to sick it on a Republican nonprofit. That's why. Come on.
Filing our taxes should not be that difficult. It should literally, as Ted Cruz says, something we should be able to fill out on a postcard.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you can just cut the IRS code down to just 3 things. You say, okay, everybody, flat rate, 10%, 12%, fill it out, send it in on a postcard. You only have 3 deductions. You have your house, you have your kids, your mortgage, your kids, and what you give to charity. That's it. It's exactly 5 lines, and you send it in. But of course, then you don't have power over redirecting, redistributing the wealth, do you?
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with that, but that's government inefficiency for you. If this Republican Party could do what they said that they were going to do and actually shrink government, we wouldn't be having these problems.
We would have less power, you see. But we are asking them to shrink their own power and return it to the people who want, and that takes a very special kind of man or woman. And I guess we're not good at judging who is actually truthful and honorable, or maybe it's in the primaries. What happens is that the veteran politicians beat the challengers who are the honorable people, every time. I don't know. Other than, it sounds like the old 1960s, t-shirts, which is, trust no one over 30. The other, I guess the analogy would be, is never vote for an incumbent. Right?
I hate to say it, but I think you might be completely correct on that. I am all about term limits across the board.
Yes.
I don't care who it is, all the way down to the Supreme Court. But I do think that once you get into Washington, there's a certain lifestyle that you get used to, and you kind of want to start holding on to that lifestyle in any way, shape, or form you can. And that means making promises to people that behind closed doors that you did not make to your constituency. And you're going to have people who act one way and say another thing during election time.
Look at Jeff Flake. He's a prime example.
Oh.
What a flake he's been.
He's well named.
Woo!
He's well
Yeah,
named.
no joke.
Hey, Brandon,
Yeah.
we've got to take a break here, but can you tell everybody where you work at and where they can find you at social media? And we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight.
Of course, you can find me at Red State. That's where you're going to find the vast majority of my writing. And you can also find me at rare.us. If you want to go on Twitter, you can find me at the Brandon Morse. And you can also find me on Facebook and YouTube.
Awesome. Hey, Brandon, thanks a bunch for coming on. And maybe in the future we could bring you on again.
Sure, absolutely. It was a fun time.
Wonderful guest. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. We have another guest for you on the other side of the break. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
In every rising of the sun, my purpose was to be thankful to be alive. I was even more thankful for the blessings that came with this life, specifically Virdis, my wife. But that came to an end when Aklavane and her minions violently took her away from me. So my new purpose in this life is to gather all the pieces of the Stone's Heart so I can defeat Aklavane and get back my bride. Join me as I travel to new worlds, making new friends and avoiding old enemies. Read more about my story in the first 2 books of the Stone's Heart series, which are now available on Amazon.com in Kindle format. The first book is The Quest for Savitvarda, and that is followed by The Heart of Pagaila. Stone's Heart is more than a fantasy and a sci-fi quest. It's me fighting to get back my precious wife, despite the overwhelming odds against me. Stone's Heart. Join, explore, and believe.
You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network. Susan, that was Brandon, very well spoken, and I mean, he was spot on.
Yeah, he was right on the money. He was really fun to talk to.
All right.
And who is our next guest? You said we have another guest.
Yes. I'm
break,
trying to
so
plug her
please tell
in
us.
right now.
Plug her in. Ooh, that could hurt. That could really hurt.
All right, a little technical difficulty.
Oh, we're having technical difficulties. Hey, since
we're having
since it's all
AJ
about-
difficulty.
That's what I said. AJ technical difficulties. Well, I did find one thing, since we're going to be focusing on Oregon, and that's your home state.
My
You
neck
love
of the
it.
woods.
But before we get there, have you seen, I mean, your eyes are burning. Oh my gosh. The Barack and Michelle Obama official portraits. Have you seen these things? They've been painted by this social justice warrior, aka artist. I don't even know, but it's got him sitting on. I mean, with all these flowers and it. Have you seen these pictures? You can see them at theguardian.com. And the weird thing is you see Obama sitting in like this, love fest of greenery and flowers, like on a chair. It almost looks like he's sitting on a toilet. It's just bizarre. And then the portrait of, Michelle Obama, she's almost invisible. She fades away. It looks like one of the, you get these books anymore where it's like a coloring book for adults, where you get to color in. It's a very intricate pattern, and adults can, it's their way of relieving stress. You get to color in the book and kind of, make your own design using crayons or whatever you want, right? That's what Michelle Obama's official portrait looks like. It looks like somebody has unfinished coloring her dress. These things are horrific, and all I can say is the Empress has no clothes. That's what they should title that Michelle Obama portrait that they just did. It's the portrait of Obama, of President Obama, they show him. I'm reading from The Guardian now. It was a vivid official portrait that shows the 44th president sitting in a suit without a tie, floating in vegetation and flowers. No joke. Obama was on hand to unveil it on Monday at the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery in Washington, where the America's Presidents section was previously an exclusive club for white people painted by white people. Okay, so this is all about because he's black, right? And because the artist is a black artist. Wow. Okay, so we're still doing social justice and race wars, I guess. Why is that the point of this whole? I mean, it's just a most bizarre. I guess it is all about color, I guess. Is that the point of showing the 44th president? He doesn't look like a white guy president, and so he's on a background of color. Is that the point? I think this thing is awful. It's disrespectful. I mean, he looks aged and awful, and the flowers are kind of, and the vines are kind of growing around his feet as though he's slowly being consumed by this wall of greenery. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. And then Mrs. Obama's, I don't even know how to describe it because it looks like it's unfinished, but it's like mostly white. That's what's so funny about the dress. It's mostly white with some black patches and then a little tiny bit of color. But then she's all in these tones of gray, as though she doesn't matter, almost as though that they're kind of downplaying her race, I would say. I mean, she doesn't have her skin tone, her beautiful, the chocolate, the beauty of her skin and her tone and her beautiful hair. She looks all washed out and kind of almost, whitewashed in a way. It's such an awful painting of her. It looks all, it's crazy. So if you haven't seen it, go to theguardian.com and you can just, I'm calling it The Empress Has No Clothes. That's the portrait of Michelle Obama. I mean, really, whoever this artist is should be spanked. She did an awful job. My humble opinion. Anyway, poor AJ is still having all kinds of technical.
I got it. Here.
I am so glad you're doing it because I can't do that technical stuff. I don't go technical, man. I don't go technical. Are we back? Are we ready?
Hold on 1 second. I am plugging her in right now.
All right. Otherwise, we're going to have to talk about why it's better to be single than married. I'll go there.
Oh, Lord.
There's a new study out. Oh, yes. Are you ready for this, or are we going to go to our guest?
Lindsay.
All right.
Are you there, Lindsay?
Oh, no. We are having all kinds of technical difficulties. AJ, you're killing me. All right,
I know. No, it's Skype is acting up on us tonight.
I'll blame Skype. Well, anyway, there's a new study that's just come out. This is over at Indy100.com. Indy100.com. It's better to be single, a study finds. All right. It turns out if you're single, you probably hold stronger social bonds that help people. All right. So here's a study. This was published in 2015. And it says that marriage can constrain people socially and is not always the happy ending we perceive it to be. That's what this study said. So what have the liberals gone off and done with this? They're now advocating that really being single is being disrespected, basically. That we need to empower single individuals. And they're pointing to this study.
I think we have... Lindsay, are you there?
I'm here.
How are you?
Hey,
we were having a little issue with Skype. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, the company you work for, and we wanted to bring you on and talk about the disastrous bills that are going on down in the short session on the Oregon State Legislature, because what Susan and I have talked about is if they're trying them out in Oregon, this is just beginning stomping grounds for them to try and take it nationwide.
Yeah, so there are two main bills that I'm focused on right now, and I'm Lindsay Bershauer. I'm the president of Leona Consulting Company, and which is a political and public affairs firm. So I've done candidate races, I've done statewide ballot measure races and issues. But right now in the short session, we are focused on the Healthcare for All bill, which
the Bernie
is,
bill.
The what?
Bernie bill.
The Bernie
I love
bill.
it. Oh.
The Bernie bill. Yeah, so that one is definitely an interesting bill. The other one I'm focused on right now is Senate Bill 1528, which is a massive tax increase for small businesses in this state. It's essentially the state legislature, the Oregon legislature, they want to disconnect from what Trump is doing in terms of tax rates. And so what that does is it protects large corporations in our state, and they still get the benefit of the federal tax cuts and state tax cuts. But small businesses, anybody who's a pass-through entity, S-Corp, LLC, sole proprietor, all those guys are going to see a tax increase if this goes through. So those are the two main ones we're focused on right now.
Sounds like Oregon wants to crush the little guy.
It does. It's definitely a Main Street versus Wall Street issue.
And when, or I'm sorry, what do you think the perspective that it's going to pass? What do you think the chances are?
Of which bill?
The tax increase on small businesses. Because honestly, I did not hear about that until I reached out to you, and you're like, well, this is number one. I'm like, yeah, you're right. The healthcare is pretty big, but the tax on small businesses seemed like that's a bill that they could easily get passed on everybody.
Well, they definitely tried to sneak it in there, didn't they? But we picked up on it for sure. The small business tax cut was actually passed in 2013. And what it did was made small businesses that make below $5 million, essentially, more competitive. It gave them a lower tax rate so they could hire more people, and it gave incentives to them to hire more people full-time. So in order to get the tax credit or the lower tax rate, you have to hire at least one full-time employee. So it benefited, folks like me who are a single owner business in terms of expanding. It gave us a little bit of room there to expand. So we're pushing back pretty hard. The NFIB, the Oregon Family Farm Association, the Oregon Small Business Association is all pushing back on this as we speak. And what it means essentially is if we disconnect from the federal tax changes and they pass Senate Bill 1528, it's about a 38% tax increase on Oregon's smallest businesses. So
Holy
it is a Main Street.
Smokes.
Yeah, 38% tax increase. So it's a Main Street versus Wall Street corporation fight. And, the interesting thing is that the Democrats in the state sort of get away with, being the Main Street champion. And that's simply not true. I mean, if they pass this, they are going to be sticking it to the little guy, the small businesses that make up the economy in this state. And keep in mind, since Measure 101 just passed, the small businesses who provide health care for their employees, they just got a tax increase based on Measure 101. So this is on top of that.
Oh, my goodness. My head's hurting now. Oh, God. I know a lot of people... thank you for doing what you're doing because it's really important. Along with that bill and House Joint Resolution 203, which, like I said, was basically Bernie care, it's proposing a constitutional amendment that everybody can have health care. And, I reached out to a mutual person that we both know, and Susan did too because we brought her on the program, is State Rep Julie Parrish. And the first thing she thought about is, what is this going to open the state up to for future litigation? And I'm talking about the deficit. We're talking about PERS. I mean, and we're talking about giving health care to everybody else. What are you hearing down at the legislature right now about that bill?
I'm not hearing a whole lot about it, but it hasn't been my focus so far. The small business tax cut has been my focus. But I mean, if you look at what strikes me as appalling is that they can pass something like this and send it to the voters, and there's no fiscal statement attached to it. How much is this going to cost us? They can't even answer that question.
They don't want to. They don't
want to answer the question.
Right.
But if you do simple math, right, this is essentially Medicare or Medicaid for all. So it's Medicaid for all. And right now we spend about $450 a month on Medicaid for a single Oregonian. So if you multiply that by 12 months and you multiply it by 2 years, because we budget on a 2-year cycle, it's about $10,800 per person in this state. Well, we have 4.1 million Oregonians in the state. So if you want to provide Medicaid for every single Oregonian, you're talking about doubling our current budget. We have about a $21 billion budget right now. Healthcare alone, just to do this and implement it based on current numbers, would cost over $44 billion.
And thus the tax for 38% on businesses. That's why they got to get the money from somewhere.
I mean, we're talking about, 3 times the tax rates for everybody across the board in the entire state. At least three times the tax rates. And that's not even factoring in, the additional cost to keep the government going, state government going. So I think the price tag is going to be shocking. We're pushing for them to actually have the fiscal attached to this, so voters know how much this is going to cost. But if you think about California balked at this and said, ooh, that's going to be way too expensive for us to do, so we're going to back away from that. They didn't do it. And California has a much richer and deeper tax base, and especially in a business environment. We just don't have that depth of wealth to be able to afford something like this. So in theory, you might agree with, healthcare is, everybody should have access to it, should be affordable. But if the state is going to be providing that care, there's a hefty price tag that goes along with that. And you also have to consider that the federal government isn't going to match everybody. They're not going to match all 4.1 million Oregonians. They're only going to match. They're only going to match what they, based on their criteria, who fits the criteria. So we're going to pick up the tab for everybody else, and it simply doesn't pencil out. And I think if you take this to the ballot and you ask voters, here's universal health care, but this is what it's going to cost you. Get ready for 2, 3, 4 times your tax rate. Oregonians are going to say no. We've voted down a sales tax 9 times. I mean, there's just no way that they're going to pass this.
No. And I was reading an article in NPR about single payer in Vermont, and the thing they brought up right away was the cost, and people would not vote for that, and in Colorado as well. So I think you're exactly right. If it's brought to a ballot, and especially if we can get that, what fiscal impact, that will be ginormous. I mean, because you would have to raise the rates. I mean, I don't know, what, 70%? Just to be functioning. I mean, and look at the PERS deficit. Mm-hmm. We're already in the state of Oregon as well, which for you that aren't in Oregon, it's the public employee retirement system. I mean, my goodness, school districts and state agencies are cutting $20 million just in the PERS. We're in a mess here. We're
well. What's gonna let's play this out. So the Oregon legislature is going to vote itself into bankruptcy, essentially, right? You're going to vote the state into bankruptcy. Is the plan that we're just going to have Oregon get bailed out by the feds? What's the plan? What are they thinking?
Well, the plan is higher taxes in 2019. That's what they're going.
Well, what if they don't get it, though? I mean, what if they don't get it? Yeah, but what if they don't get it? I mean, because you just got through saying nobody's going to vote for this. If it's actually on the ballot, nobody would vote for it. So they're just going to pass it through without asking the voters. They're just going to go legislatively and just increase taxes across the board. What are they going to do?
Well,
Where
I
are they
think
going to find it?
What Lindsay pointed out to me in our conversations earlier in the week, because she and I were discussing the issues in Oregon, and that's why I wanted to bring her on, because she's a fierce advocate for limited government in the state. Is the Democrats in the legislature are pushing for a supermajority. That's how they're going to get it through.
That's what we have in California. We have so many darn Democrats that they have the 2/3 majority necessary to do whatever they want. You guys don't quite have that in Oregon yet?
Not quite, but they're going after it pretty hard this cycle.
Sure sounds like it.
And the reason is because Oregonians as a whole have rejected sales taxes and those kinds of massive tax increases over 9 times, in recent years. And so they don't want to ask voters. They want to be able to have the ability to pass these kind of massive tax increases. And if you look at, PERS alone, you mentioned it a little bit, AJ, but PERS is consuming more and more of our budgets, our social service budgets and our school budgets. Measure 101 that just passed actually not only is going to hit small business owners, like I mentioned, but school districts as well. They buy their insurance on the group market. And so, we have school superintendents coming out saying this is going to cost us a 6-7% cut in our budget just to be able to pay for the current expansion of Medicaid. So if you're talking about, providing Medicaid to the entire state, it just blows my mind how we're going to be able to do this without massive tax increases, not just on businesses. You could tax the businesses all day long, but it's going to be across the board. Every single Oregonian who pays taxes is going to pay for this, and it's going to be substantial. And it's just for health care. That's only one part of our budget.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's unbelievable. I think did you help with the Dennis Richardson for Secretary of State campaign? Am I right on that?
Yeah, I definitely supported Dennis. Mm-hmm.
Susan, I got to tell you, he's a Republican. And he's a conservative. He has been doing fantastic work at the Secretary of State office. This week he released was it this week? Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it this? It was within the last week about the failures with the foster system in the state of Oregon, and people are just their heads are exploding because it seems like Governor Brown has been covering up the atrocities that are being going on. Can you speak a little bit about that, Lindsay?
Yeah, so Dennis actually won the first statewide race for a Republican in a long time. And he won, he had 892,000 votes from Oregonians, and he beat his Democratic opponent, who was very well known actually, by about 80,000 votes. So it was a landslide victory. And it's interesting because the role of Secretary of State isn't exactly, something that we all understand. What does this guy do all day long? But Oregonians instinctively knew from his campaign that there had to be some sort of check and balance going on because Democrats have had the majorities in the state for a long time. And people are looking around going, well, let's see, my taxes are going up, but I'm not quite getting the service, increases that I expect for that. And what's going on here? And we have some of the lowest graduation rates in the country for our public education system. And so
fabulous.
He ran on those things. He ran on, I'm going to go audit, the public school system. I'm going to go audit the foster care system and, our air quality issues that we're having, and we're going to dig into why some of this stuff keeps happening. And he's been doing that. He's been making good on his campaign promises, and it's just driving the Democrats insane, especially the governor, because she was the Secretary of State right before him. And this was her job to fix some of this stuff, and she didn't do it. So, I think he's doing a great job. It's one of the best votes that I've ever cast, I think, historically speaking. He is providing the balanced look at what's going on in Oregon state government. He's shining a light on some of what's going on. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Oregonians do care about this stuff. They do care that their tax dollars are being spent wisely. We do care that our foster children don't spend months in a hotel because, we can't seem to make the system work. And so I think he's been an invaluable, part of the past couple years, and I think he's doing a great job, and I think Oregonians are responding to that.
Absolutely. Actions speak louder than words, and that's what a lot of us have heard year after year after year from these politicians, not only at the local level but at the national level. And Dennis Richardson, everything that he said he was going to do, he's done. I mean, and it's when I saw his name come across the screen, winner, chicken dinner, basically for Secretary of State. I didn't know what to say. I remember that moment, Lindsay, probably like you do.
I do too.
I remember going, oh my, wow, that's a game changer, because I think his challenger was it Brad Avakian? Wasn't that the guy that? Yeah, the guy that worked for the Labor Department that forced the the cake people to pay the $130,000?
Yes. That was him.
So I mean, Susan, this was the guy that
sounds like a good guy.
Yeah, Brad or Dennis? I'm just messing with you.
A conservative.
Yes. It's been very great. Lindsay, thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Thank you.
If anybody wanted to reach out and hire you, or what's the best way they can get a hold of you? And we'll go ahead and tweet out some of that information. If they were thinking about running for public office, you would definitely listen to them. Doesn't mean she'll take you, but she'll definitely listen to you.
Yeah, well, my email, lindsay@leonaconsulting.com, or my cell phone. I'm available anytime. It's also my business phone, so you're welcome to tweet that out.
Hey, but, what can I say? I will.
Yeah, no, I mean, we need a more diverse voices on the fiscally conservative side. I mean, I think a lot of Oregonians tend to be more libertarian minded, especially with the fiscal issues. And we need that balance here, because it is getting worse. And the only option that Democrats have to offer is higher taxes. That's our only solution. So we need a balanced voice with that.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. We need more fiscal conservatives. And
we just need more conservatives. I don't care what kind. We need a whole bunch of kind of conservatives. Social, fiscal, any of them, because we don't have enough of them in government. That's for sure.
No doubt. Anyways, thanks a bunch, Lindsay, and God bless, and have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
Wow, she knows her stuff, doesn't she, Susan?
She sure knows what's going on in Oregon. And I think it's interesting, though, that Oregon is desperately trying to revive Obamacare. It's already failed. And yet here is desperate Oregon trying to, give it new life. And although I will say one thing, if we're going to experiment with Obamacare, it is much more constitutionally appropriate that it be done at the state level. It's like a little laboratory. Let the state figure it out. When it implodes and burns like a lithium battery, then we'll know.
But can we try it out in your state and not mine?
Hey, we're already doing it, and kill me. I know. But at least it's not. I mean, it's already failed nationally. We don't like it. But look, if people in Vermont or Oregon really want to pay, 85% of taxes, they could do that, and the state is where that should be happening, because you could have you can leave. More people are leaving California than are coming in.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oregon's going to be the same way. So you know what? We're all going to have a mass exodus off the left coast.
No kidding. I am sick and tired. And that's why I wanted to bring it on Lindsay, because these things like raising the small business tax, or the tax on small businesses, and the healthcare constitutional amendment that the left is pushing, they're testing it out in Oregon to take it to as many states as they can.
Well, really at least they've got to get a foothold. Look, okay, so you're going to punish all the businessmen, and they're all going to all move, and then you're going to be inviting all of the people who want free health care. I mean, that's what California's doing. Same thing.
Yep.
How's that working out for you? It's not working out so well.
It's not.
All right, let's just have a welfare state, and we'll beat up on everybody who's actually trying to pay their bills. And that's not going to work out very well.
I know it's not. And I'll end our program on this. About a year, I'll say within the last couple years, 5 years, the state of Idaho was playing commercials in the state of Oregon to attract new businesses. That's how bad it got here.
Yeah, they do that. Crazy. They do that.
Well, I can't believe another hour is gone. Hey, Susan, I hope you have a great week. You are listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.